We are going to make homemade soft pretzels. I've measured out all of my ingredients already. I'm going to start with 1.5 cups of warm water. And in the water, I'm going to mix 1 tablespoon of salt and 1 tablespoon of sugar. I'll combine that with a whisk just to get it to dissolve a little. And then I'm going to add 1 packet of active dry yeast. Active dry yeast comes in a container like this or in little packages that are already pre-measured. Because I've bought a jar, I'm going to measure out 2¼ teaspoons, which is the equivalent of 1 package. And then I'm going to sprinkle that on the top of this water, sugar, and salt mixture. And I'm going to let it rest for 5 minutes. All right, the 5 minutes is up, and hopefully what you see on top is that your yeast is dissolving and that it's starting to form a layer of foam. I have a few pieces that still are dry, so I'm just going to let them touch the water and wait a minute, and then I'm going to add that to my mixing bowl. I've waited that minute, and now I'm going to add my flour. So I have 4.5 cups of flour. There's a ton of flour. I'm going to add to the water mixture. I'm also going to add oil. Now the oil, it calls for 3 tablespoons in the whole recipe, but it says that that's divided. What that means is you're going to use oil at 2 different points in the recipe. So the first step that requires oil requires 2 tablespoons of oil, and the second step requires 1 tablespoon of oil. So I've measured those separately, and right now I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of oil to this mixture. And now I'm going to mix thoroughly using a wooden spoon. My suggestion for that is to go along the sides and pull the dough into the middle of the mixture. And then you can stir it around the edges and flip it until it starts to come together. You don't want to overmix the dough. You really just want the dough to form into what could be pushed together with your hands as a ball. Once the dough has come together this much, you can now use your hands. So the first thing I need to do is take my ring off. So you should take any rings off that you have. My hands have been washed. And now I'm gonna get my hands in here and form this into more of a ball. And you can push down on it using the heel of your hand. Another option is to bring the dough onto your counter. When you do that, you want to sprinkle a little bit of flour on the counter so it doesn't stick. And you can work the dough that way as well. So you fold it over, knead it with your heel of your hand, fold it over, knead it with the heel of your hand. All right, I've kneaded the dough, it's pretty smooth. Now I'm going to take the bowl I've used, I'm going to wipe out a lot of the flour, put that in the garbage, and I'm going to put the remaining 1 tablespoon of olive oil in the bowl. And spread it around the bowl, and that's just so that the dough doesn't dry out or stick. Set your dough in the bowl, and we're going to cover this with plastic wrap and leave it in a warm place for an hour. You can start preheating your oven closer to the end of the hour. That'll make the top of your stove warm if you want to place it there. All right, the dough is sat for an hour on top of the warm stove, and mine has risen. I hope yours has too. So now I'm just gonna put it onto a lightly floured surface, and I am going to roll it out, almost like the shape of a loaf, so that I can cut it into 8 equal pieces. Now that I have 8 pieces that are pretty much equal, I'm gonna take one of them at a time, and I'm gonna roll them out in the shape of a rope. I'm gonna add a little bit of flour to my table just so it doesn't stick. I'm gonna use both my hands and roll back and forth and move my hands out to the sides as I do. I'm just gonna keep repeating that until the dough forms a rope. The rope is now 20 inches long, so I'm gonna form my pretzel. I'm gonna start by forming a U, crossing the ends over twice, and then folding down and pinching into the bottom of the U. All right, so I have all 8 pretzels laid out on this tray, and I'm bringing a large pot of water to a rolling boil so that we can put these in to the water with the baking soda. All right, I'm gonna add the 2/3 of baking soda into the water. I'm gonna do this a little bit at a time. There we go. And then we're gonna wait for that to come to a boil. My water and baking soda mixture are boiling now, and I'm gonna use a slotted spoon like this to place my pretzel on. And then I'm gonna put the pretzel in for 30 seconds on each side. I'll just lower it into the water, and then I'm gonna flip it and leave it for another 30 seconds. And now I'm gonna remove it from the water. I'm gonna hold it here just a little bit so the water drips off, and I'm gonna place it on a baking sheet. Okay, now all the pretzels are out of the boiling water, and I'm going to use my egg wash, the 2 eggs that I've beaten, and a basting brush to put an egg wash coating on each of them. So you're gonna brush the pretzels with the egg wash, and this will help the pretzels turn golden brown, and it'll help the salt stick to the pretzels. Now I'm going to take coarse salt, and I'm going to sprinkle the salt on top of each of the pretzels. This is the point where if you wanted to put cheese on them, you could, or like shredded chocolate. You'd also do that after you've cooked them and just melt it on top. I'm gonna place this in the oven at 450 degrees for 10 to 15 minutes, and they'll go a golden brown color. All right, I left mine in a little longer than what was suggested. My oven usually runs cool, so instead of doing 15 minutes, I did 18, but mine are a little, maybe even a little too dark, so you can make that decision for yourself. I really wanted to try them when they were like the golden brown. I hope you enjoy them.